The Rainmaker Multiplier On-Demand series is brought to you by Clarity to Prosperity, a financial training, coaching, and IP development organization led by financial advisors, coaches, and business leaders committed to taking a holistic approach to advising. To learn more about our organization and upcoming training opportunities for financial professionals, visit claritytoprosperity.com.
Welcome to the Rainmaker Multiplier On-Demand webinar. This series, as most of you should know, is accompanied with a podcast as well as a white paper. So this webinar series and the series as a whole is going to cover all different topics around how do you multiply yourself as the Rainmaker, your financial services practice. What are additional efficiencies? How do you bring on associate advisors, new profitable revenue streams? How do you bring on more efficiency and tap into thought leadership in financial services industry to grow your business, to grow your practice, to multiply yourself, multiply your revenue, multiply your efficiency as a business owner? In this session, we're going to be going through the Attorney Advisor Alliance. So we're going to talk about the benefits of aligning with an attorney, some of the big payoffs that you're going to get by doing so for attorneys and advisors to collaboratively work together in harmony in the best interest of your clients. And so in this, I'm going to have, I've invited a few speakers to join us today. Dave Allison, my business partner at Clarity to Prosperity, will be joining us. Hey, Dave.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
And also Rick Randall, and as well as Michael Marsalis. So I'm going to give a little bit of background real quick on Rick and Mike to introduce them first. So first of all, Rick, Chairman and CEO of the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. And so he practices law actively. He's the founder of Randall and Gentry and Pike in Indianapolis, Indiana. He's got a really strong financial background, CLU, CHFC, CFP, and he applies this to estate planning like no other attorney does. So that's why he's the founder and the leader of the National Network of Estate Planning Attorney. They're very process driven. So they have a planning process. And they license and train attorneys on it through NEPA, the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. So welcome, Rick.
Thanks, Jason. Glad to be with you.
And secondly, I'm going to announce Michael, who's going to be participating in this webinar with us. So he's the founder and managing member of Marsalis Law Group. It's a small boutique law firm focusing on estate planning. In their estate planning practice, they utilize the most cutting-edge techniques to assist clients, both these guys do, to achieve their legacy planning goals. So that's why we've invited the two of them onto this webinar to share some of their experiences and their knowledge to help us all grow.
So Jason, as we talked about the Rainmaker Multiplier and adding more efficiency and accountability and resources to your business, the Attorney Advisor Alliance fits into that concept really well. If we think about it a little bit different than I think a lot of traditional attorneys and advisors think about the relationship. So, you and I and of course Rick and Michael, we all go to a lot of different industry meetings. We get a lot of opportunities to speak with attorneys and advisors alike. And we get the chance to ask them about how this relationship works out. And a lot of times we hear either advisors or attorneys both talk about the relationship in the sense of a referral partner. And what we want to talk about throughout today's webinar is translating that into a professional alliance. How do you turn a referral partner into a professional alliance? And if you think about some commonalities of the two and then some differences of the two, a commonality is that both a referral partner and a professional alliance are someone you trust to get the job done, right? I mean, if I'm a financial advisor, I'm not going to refer a client over to an attorney if I don't trust they could get the job done, and vice versa with the attorney. They're not going to refer a client over to a financial advisor if they don't trust they can get the job done. But then from there, some of the differences between a referral partner and a professional alliance start to transform. And the first is that for the most part, referral partners are purely transactional. So if I'm an advisor and I want to refer my client over to an attorney to get a trust drawn up or get a will taken care of, a lot of times the relationship ends at that transaction. I refer it over to the attorney, they draw the trust up, and then there's not a lot of coordination from there. With a referral partner, you don't expect much back, right? You expect to send your client over, get the transaction taken care of, but not a whole lot of expectation back and forth.
You hope to get referrals back.
You hope to, right? But a lot of times it doesn't work out that way. But when you start to build a professional alliance between the planning professionals, now it goes from a purely transactional relationship where you don't expect much back to gaining an accountability partner in your business. And accountability is so big, especially on the independent side, independent financial advisors, independent attorneys, having somebody that can help hold you accountable, somebody that you can conduct joint marketing with. And this is the biggest one. It's somebody who's committed to helping you achieve your goals, just as you are to them. So our thought with this webinar today in the Rainmaker Multiplier is, how do we take the traditional referral partner and how do we build a professional alliance? A alliance that, again, not only do we trust to take care of the relationship, but we also gain that accountability partner, the opportunity for joint marketing, and the commitment to helping each other hit our goals. So what we did was, we took a step back and we looked at, why the attorney advisor alliance? Why these two planning professionals? And for those of you who've been in the business for a while, this is some common sense to you, but both estate planning attorneys and advisors, they share a common demographic of client, right? They're both looking to work generally with the same clientele. They rely upon each other in order to best serve the clients. Jason mentioned that early on. If you can develop a well-coordinated plan, that's going to work a lot better than building plans in silos. They both complement each other's sets of services. So there's not a competitive situation. There's a lot of complementary services that we offer the clients. And then last but not least, when working together as a true professional alliance, the sum is much greater than the individual parts. And so by coordinating that holistic plan, let's face it, the ultra high net worth have had this type of planning forever. Their attorneys, their advisors, they work together to collaborate and build a plan that's going to work for that client. But a lot of the demographic of this country, a lot of the mass affluent, the middle class millionaires, right?
Yeah.
They've struggled to get that true professional alliance together. And we think that there's a massive opportunity, which is why Rick and Michael have joined us from the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys, and the holistic advisors at Clarity to Prosperity think that we can continue to grow this alliance nationwide.
So Rick, why do you think this synergy is? Tell me, in your opinion, why is this synergy so important?
Well, I think it's just inverse, Jason, from the point of view of the advisor. Is the attorney is also looking for a partner, a planning partner, if you will. And a lot of what we do at the beginning is very similar in terms of trying to build a relationship. It's that the typical attorney builds it enough to get a document done and then is gone. And I think working together, if we're dedicated to having plans that actually work for our clients, then we really need both sets of professionals and some tax help as well, obviously. But I think if we have things that each of us do well, covered well, that's going to improve the plan from the standpoint of the original client. Then one of the things we're real excited about is after the death or disability of the original client, how the family is going to do better as well. So business-wise, Jason, I think there's some advantages too for preservation of the relationship into the next generation. So keeping assets under management on your side, things of that nature, more sales, doing a better job for those that receive it, And of course, on the planning side, that means our plan has worked well. So I think there are a lot of overlaps that we might have a chance to talk about today.
Absolutely. It just seems, when you look at all of this, it's a no-brainer to build a powerful relationship.
Yeah, and there was a survey that we did, and Rick, I was working with one of your guys, Scott Williams, for the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys, and we did a comprehensive survey, if you remember, Rick, to look at all. We surveyed advisors, and then you guys surveyed all the attorneys. And the results that we came back with were really enlightening. And so Dave, you want to cover these results on the advisor side to start with?
Yeah, well, first I'll just give you a demographic of the types of advisors that we interviewed. And so first off, you can see up on the screen, it was generally independent advisors, so non-wirehouse, securities and insurance licensed, average of about 17 years in the business, average of 2 to 3 staff members. And then we looked at the types of clients that they were working with from a net worth standpoint, and this was their investable assets. 15% were in that $250,000 to $500,000, 45% in that $500,000 to $1 million, 30% $1 million to $2 million, and 10% $2 million or above. So, really these advisors were very experienced. They had a good business. They were focused on that mass affluent market space. So it's not the advisors that are going after the $10 million plus. It's the people that are working with, the mass affluent client out there. And from an estate planning attorney standpoint, we looked in here's some of the characteristics, which I just want to show you because the attorneys and the advisors aligned very well in a lot of different categories, not only what their overall business looked like, but the clientele that they were working with. So these were advisors focused on, that had private practices, specializing in estate planning and elder law. They weren't securities or insurance licensed for the most part, although some of them had professional designations like, Rick, in your case, you're a certified financial planner amongst a few other designations. Average of 19 years of experience, average of about 3 to 4 staff members, average book of business that they were maintaining, that they had done legal work for, was about $90 million of client assets. And then their range was about 60% in that $500,000 to $2 million, 40% in the $2 million or more of client net worth. And so very similar profiles of the attorneys and the advisors that partook in this survey to try to figure out why this professional alliance wasn't forming as strongly as it could be.
And this is really enlightening, yeah. Rick?
I was going to just a second, Jason, and make sure that everybody got that in the survey. For the attorney side, that's not just investable assets. So although it looks like a little bit higher, it's the same. What was great about it, it's the same people, same size offices, same kind of clientele, very much aligned with both sides.
Yeah, no doubt. And, some of the highlights, the attorney's new business, 40% came from financial advisors, was being referred in from financial advisors. With insurance agents, it increased over 50%.
So that was interesting, just a source of marketing for the attorneys, that big, and that much of their business was relying on other financial advisors. And, when we started talking to the advisors, they were generally referring about 20 clients per year to attorneys for legal and estate work. So a pretty good flow of the advisors, that they were recommending and understood the importance of their financial clients getting their legal documents in order, more so enough so that they were facilitating that referral over.
That's a big number too, 1.5 to 2 a month. Yeah.
Yep. And then, and these are, of course, the advisors that we surveyed. These are ones that are growth focused, right? They're doing a lot of marketing in the community. They're bringing on, a good volume of prospects to clients.
Yeah, all the advisors we surveyed are all marketing.
Yep, absolutely. But on the advisor side, the advisors were only averaging a few referrals from the attorney each year. So the advisors are given a pretty high volume over to the attorneys, but we're only getting a few back. And one of the questions that came out that we asked is how the advisor felt their working relationship with the attorney was. And 73% of the advisors did not feel they had a strong working relationship with their attorney referral partner. So again, think back to that definition we shared earlier of referral partner. It was generally purely transactional. It wasn't really a professional alliance that had been developed. And so we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into these highlights of the survey. And we started asking a few other questions. So the first one was really directed to the attorneys. And we said, describe your current situation, either A or B.
And so 44% selected A. I need help in being able to identify clients that could benefit by working with a professional financial advisor. So that I thought that was really insightful, 44%. B answer would have been, I'm comfortable in my ability to identify clients that could benefit by working with a professional financial advisor. So they need help.
They need help, and there's a training opportunity, right? Just by having the advisor train or work with that attorney to identify situations could mean a lot more opportunities on the back end side, right? It wasn't that they didn't want to, they just wanted more training around how to be able to identify them. The next question we asked is describe your financial services understanding. And this was again directed to the attorneys. And so they were able to select number 1, number 2, or number 3. Number 1 was, I do not have much background with financial investments and would greatly benefit by having a colleague I could call to help me understand the financial concepts. And this was interesting. This was the majority, 39% surveyed selected number 1. They don't have much background, and they thought that they could greatly benefit by a colleague, right? So that's an opportunity for the advisor to be that colleague. Number 2, which 33% selected number 2.
But that's fairly good though, Dave. And if you look at, it still says, but on occasion, right? They still could benefit on occasion. But you add those two together, that's 72% of the time. They either don't have a background and want a lot of help, or they have a background, but they certainly want somebody to lean on, 72% of the time.
Absolutely. And what's unique too, so that's the majority, right? That's a huge opportunity. But even that third one says, I have a strong understanding of financial investments and would benefit in working with an advisor that can help me better understand creative ways or cutting edge financial planning strategies. And so even this one, think about if an advisor is aligned with a cutting edge training organization like at Clarity, we package a lot of cutting edge ideas and concepts. And so to be able to take that stuff to the attorneys to bring them new relevant information around planning opportunities that exist, especially, and Rick and Michael could attest to this, with the high estate tax level that there is today, to be able to bring, more cutting edge financial planning strategies that can help that attorney develop strong relationships and ideas with their client base can be really effective also.
And this next one is really kind of blew me away from a survey perspective, because I needed to change my mindset in what I believed, because the numbers don't lie, right? I did not think that I'd be able to find attorneys or that attorneys out there would be willing to do joint marketing. I mean, that was my perception. That was my misperception. So would you be willing to do joint marketing? 98%. I mean, so that's a high number. So don't make that mistake of thinking there aren't attorneys out there that don't want to grow their practice and aren't willing to invest in their business.
So Jason, talk about, this journey started even before 8 years ago, and you mentioned the journey you and Scott Williams went through, and some other attorneys that you've worked with in the J.L. Smith group also. But to go kind of build that alliance model, right? That matchmaking. Talk about the 4-step process that you helped pioneer here. In terms of building that referral matchmaking.
Yeah. So, the first thing that we wanted to do in the alliance model, this is all built out into our online university e-learning, but in the alliance model is determining really what's that ideal, attorney look like. And it's also the opportunity to kind of, as you're doing that, there's a series of questions and kind of forms that are not really forms, it's questions, it's a form that you fill out to identify what's that look like. And then ultimately, too, how do you identify the local attorneys in your area? First, what we have you do is look at the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. Because if there's an attorney in your area, philosophically, their thinking is going to align very well with comprehensive financial planning and holistic planners. So if that's you, first, see if there's a national network attorney in your area. But if there's not, then you can go through the process of identifying the local attorneys in your area. And we have you start with centers of influence and your own client base, etc. And then do a vetting process to identify by looking at their websites and really their background to make sure they would be an actual good fit to go on to step 2. Now, step 2 is really, it's an elimination process. It's really a matter of going there to their office and eliminating the ones that based on that first meeting, they're not a right fit. The environment of their office isn't a right fit. Maybe they're not a right fit. The way their staff treated you, or the way the experience that you got from a customer service, perspective, whatever it is, it's an elimination round is what 2 is. Once you've found the right advisors and we facilitate how to contact them, et cetera, within the steps. And then step 3 is where you're having them to your office. And now this is laying out the terms of like joint marketing and, how you're going to work together and who's going to follow up. If you're going to do seminars, who's going to do the round, who's going to be responsible of setting the appointments and following up and have the initial discovery meeting, etc. All those things are outlined in step 3 to make sure the attorney buys in. And then one of the other things we do talk about is the importance of knowing each other's process, right? So knowing each other's process is important. Taking each other through, you take them through your financial planning process, they take you through their estate planning process. And then from there, it's really step 4 is the ongoing relationship. There's a series of exercises, agenda basically that we created to make sure the momentum stays strong so you can keep the relationship going and continue to do joint marketing and referrals back and forth.
So we're going to go through just a couple highlights of each of these steps. We're certainly not going to go into detail on the tools, the exercises, the agendas, but just to kind of see the 4-step process and how if you don't have an attorney through the national network, you need to go find one, or maybe you have an attorney you're working with right now and you want to kind of reevaluate that relationship. You're going to get to see through the rest of this webinar today what these 4 steps look like, plus what, and Rick and Michael are going to show from a planning process how the synergies can be built. And so within step 1, as Jason mentioned, the alliance model, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to go, to Google and look up every estate planning attorney in your area. You have clients and centers of influence who probably have had good, favorable experiences with other attorneys in the area. And so tapping into your client base, tapping into the centers of influence, getting personal recommendations for that potential alliance match could be a way to expedite finding some potentials that could be good fits to go through this matchmaking process. So as Jason mentioned, there's a lot of tools built to research that match, right? Where do you go to? What do you look up online and through, referrals? How do you establish that in-person meeting to begin the process, right? That flows right into step number 2, the match filter. So as Jason mentioned, this is more that disqualification process. So you're going to want to determine what your right fit match is. So this is where you go document out what that ideal professional alliance looks like for you. You're going to build a new relationship packet so that when you show up at these attorneys' offices, that you've got a professional packet put together that shows why that attorney should invest then in another relationship building meeting, which is step 3. So you don't want to wing it. You want to look like, you want to have it all packaged and professionally developed. We're going to show you how to host that meeting and how to set expectations of what that meeting should look like. Step number 3 is that alliance interview. This is where you're going to determine if the alliance match is mutually a good fit. So this is a much more in-depth. Step number 2, maybe that's a 30-minute meeting or a lunch, going to their office and not spending a lot of time diving deep into what you do, but just more feeling out what that person is like, what the culture of their business is like. Step number 3, this is where you're going to dive a lot more into the details, the planning philosophies, the planning process and the differentiators, how you charge, what your fees are, what your ideal client profile is, what are your marketing goals, what's the big picture vision of your business and where you're going with your career, in starting to map out what a planning partner expectation agreement is. And then step number 4, this is now where you've agreed, you've narrowed it down to one planning partner, one professional alliance, and it's all about relationship building at this point. Getting really comfortable with that person and making them really comfortable with you so that you can go down the path of building a professional alliance together. And so, as we kind of concluded this survey, we talked to some of the attorneys and the advisors, and it was really interesting. This is a quote that came out of the survey from one of the attorneys. We asked, what are the dangers, concerns, or fears do you have with, in working with the financial advisor? And I think as a financial advisor going into the matchmaking, right, as you're meeting with attorneys to understand some of the fears that they have, this attorney said, I know so little about them, their training, etc. I have no idea whether they would be a product pushing salesman rushing from one victim to another, or a professional who cares deeply for the clients and realizes that as we do the right thing for other people, doing so provides for our own needs. The dangers are that we invest into a relationship that turns out to be a waste of time and effort, but that is a modest danger. I think it's worth giving it a try. And if you think about this, this is why it was so important to build that 4-step process, because if you spend enough time in step 2, 3, and 4, you completely eliminate this danger that might exist.
And here's another one, but at the end of the day, you're seeing a reoccurring theme here that this is not who we are, right? So what are the greatest opportunities you could envision in working with a financial advisor? Now, these are the things that I think the right attorneys that you're going to be able to get in touch with, this is the kind of mindset of what you're looking for. And that's why we invited, Rick and Michael Marcelise on the call with us today, because Rick is successfully working with an advisor that actually works with us as well, Clarity to Prosperity. And so let's go ahead and talk to Michael about how he's working with one of our advisors, and kind of want to turn it over to you a little bit, Michael, to share your story and some early successes you're starting to have.
Thank you very much, you guys, for having me. This all really started as a result of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act. I've been practicing law for 34 years, doing estate planning for 31. And the concentration before that act was the AB trust, the inheritance tax and estate tax concentration. As a result of that, I started looking around for what is the best alternative to the AB trust, and I was invited by an advisor to go to Clarity to Prosperity's Holistic Advisor Academy back in June of 2017. There I met some of the people from White Glove Workshops who talking to, but I also met a lot of people from C2P, hunkered down in their website at the Attorney Advisor Alliance, and that's where I saw the notation that they exclusively worked with the attorneys from the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. So I looked them up, and got in touch with Rick's office, and went down to their collegium in Indianapolis, and they offered the alternative, and the only alternative that I felt that addressed the holistic approach to estate planning, but the answer to the Tax Cut Act. And then I joined that back in June as well of 2017, and after working with the national network, reached out to you, Jason, to see what we could do to re-energize the Attorney Advisor Alliance.
Absolutely, that's great, Michael. So talk about a little bit, how you've put the Attorney Advisor Alliance into practice between your relationship with Greg, an advisor who's been with Clarity, as well as the White Glove workshop program.
Sure. I've known Greg Dolinsky from Financial Benefits Group since 1994. Besides the estate planning that I do most of my work, probably 60% of my work, I'm also a securities attorney and previously had a Series 7 and Series 24. So I was counsel to the broker-dealer that Greg was involved with. And then once we started talking, and we go down to Florida every winter to several advisors who also use C2P, and talked about the answer or what answers there are for holistic planning. And he was one of the ones that told me about C2P. And we have worked together doing these holistic workshops for the last couple of years. I have done, last year I did 2 workshops with White Glove. Last week I did 2 workshops with White Glove. And I'm kind of happy to say I was one of the first attorneys that White Glove used when they were transferring only from financial advisors to estate planning attorneys. And ironically enough, when I first joined or first got in touch with Rick Randall, I said, hey, there's this group called White Glove, that does this marketing for estate planning. And he kind of laughed and said, you're the second person today that brought them up, and I'll let you take that from there, Rick.
Yeah, and so in my practice, thanks, Mike, in my practice, and I think the slide here is showing White Glove's pricing structure. And so I know, Jason and Dave, that you guys are involved with White Glove much longer than we have been, and in all of these different types of workshops. The one about halfway down, Estate Planning 567, I had been working with an advisor here locally as well, and he had found White Glove and had contacted them, and they were using the Estate Planning 567, the basic material, and that's what Michael got started with. That was authored by White Glove in consultation with some other folks that had that background. And what we did was start a pilot program for the national network with our own material and this holistic process from the legal side forward. And so that'll give you an idea of this little intro slide. So we use Estate Planning 567 the same way that you would as an advisor. And the material that we have, you can see here, some of our themes have been substituted for the basic. We feel that most plans don't work. We do a lot of trust planning, and just to keep it simple, the easiest thing is that the funding is very seldom done. So we one of our differentiators that Dave was mentioning is that we stay with the clients in the initial funding and then the ongoing funding, and that's something to really work with the advisors with. And of course, the clients don't realize the importance of titling or leaving instructions. So just at the most basic level, the plans generally don't work. The pyramid is our counseling approach. And it says that with the clients, you teach us the family, and we'll teach you the law, and together we'll build this personalized plan. So it's a lot of discovery at the front end, which is kind of unusual for attorneys. And so it fits very well into joint marketing. So it kind of opens up our process so that we can do things together. And each alliance would set it up maybe differently, but it promotes the joint planning. Our message is this 3-step strategy that a client would want to implement, and it involves designing as the first step. Our legacy, we use the term slightly differently, to build the plan over time during their lifetime, and then the inheritance occurs. And if you look at number 1, develop your plan with counseling-oriented planning partners. That's our way of talking about holistic planning in the sense that C2P does it. And so that was a very good match all along. So I think that it fits us both in. This is not made up for the Alliance. This is something that we believe in and that we've done for a long, long time. And so in our process, we use what we call the lifespan circle. And I believe on the next slide, we've got just a snippet that was the thing that caught Dave's eye as we kind of exchanged some information and updated each other on where our processes had gone. And so we do from an update standpoint, is what we call a survivor support program. And so, Mike, you mentioned the AB Trust. Well, we still do AB Trust, but there's a lot more counseling involved with it. And then after the death of the first spouse, this survivor support program it handles all of these different issues. I bolded in our workshop the changes in the personal and family, but right above that, you see the investment strategy, and we were excited to learn more about the progress that you had all made. So that's just one example, and we'll kind of, at the end of the webinar, take you around our lifespan circle and show you others. But right out of the gate, there was a really great match that the two organizations had done separately and independently from each other, where we identified a need, and it in each of our respective areas, we talked about not being siloed. Some interaction that really allows us to do marketing in a joint manner, promote it together.
Yeah, and it just seemed, jumped out on the page, Rick, as you mentioned. We talk about in the bucket plan, legacy planning, and how important that is for the surviving spouse, and that you guys have that surviving spouse program. So Jason, can you share, and what we want to do in this next section is look side by side of, the advisor's holistic planning process and the attorney's holistic planning process, and see where some of these synergies in the joint planning really arise. So Jason, why don't you share a little bit about the bucket plan and the holistic planning process that Clarity teaches advisors?
Yeah, so this is a visual. Really what happens is initially up front, it's a 3-step process to build the plan. Step 4 is the ongoing maintenance and support. A lot of clients have had the experience where there's a lot of attention paid to them up front, but then the advisor doesn't continue to follow through and update the plan and keep everything relevant and provide an excellent customer service experience ongoing. And so that's why we put that step 4 to let them know that's just as important as the upfront. And then we'll talk a little bit about what happens in 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So in step 1, it's really the fact finding and data gathering. So it's really an opportunity to understand where your client is right now, dive deep into their goals, their objectives, some of their major concerns and priorities, and get all of that kind of on the table and documented so that we could understand what their challenges and priorities are, what services that we offer that could meet their needs, and then, agree to move forward into step 2, where we're going to begin to organize their financial life and goals and take action.
And a lot of those questions are around estate planning issues. As you know, Dave, we ask about deep on beneficiary designations. Do you have things set up to avoid probate? Do you have per stirpes per capita listed out? Do you have everything organized so that way if one spouse passes away, the other one doesn't skip a beat? When the second one of you passes away, would the family be able to plug in and settle the estate with minimal, complications and unorganization and taxes and attorney fees? And so a lot of that stuff is talked about. Those questions are asked up front because it's very relevant to the estate planning process, is having a comprehensive holistic plan. And in step 2, that's exactly what we do, is we organize everything. We use a 3-ring binder and a process called the Family Estate Organizer. And it's so beneficial because ultimately everything of importance all their financial, insurance, tax, legal documents, passwords to the internet, deeds, titles, birth certificates, anything of importance goes into this 3-ring binder to make it easier for the surviving spouse and ultimately the beneficiaries, when they're both gone, to settle the estate. And so in doing this, though, it also tees up and organizes everything for the attorney to do the estate planning. The attorneys love it because we've already done so much of the heavy lifting and getting everything organized up front.
You can see by taking this consultative approach and asking those level of questions in step 1, the fact finding, step 2, determining where you want to go, the family estate organizer, it becomes natural to want to bring an estate planning attorney into the mix to solve some of these challenges and priorities for our clients. But then talk about step 3, actually achieving a holistic plan and designing the client's bucket plan.
Yeah, and ultimately we subscribe to a simple 3-bucket approach so visually the clients know everything's being addressed. In their now bucket, they know that we're going to counsel them through to make sure they have an ample amount of money, which is opposite of most advisors who are trying to squeeze every drop out of the turnip and basically keep the littlest amount of money in the bank so they can earn investment fees on the rest. We do a counter approach and counsel them on the importance of having an ample amount of money for emergency or comfort fund and planned expenses in the now bucket that we're not going to invest or make money on, but it's going to give the client sleep insurance to put their head on the pillow at night. Once we've established that now bucket, it's a simple 2-bucket approach, soon and later. The soon bucket is the money that we're going to create an income stream from. For some people, we can only create a bridge of income because the rest of it has to be invested in the later bucket for growth. Some people, we can create lifetime income stream out of the soon bucket. So it just depends. But the idea with the soon bucket is to give them the confidence that they're going to have money to be able to draw income from throughout the rest of their lifetime. And then the later bucket, now that we bought ourselves a time horizon or confidence with the now and the soon bucket, we give the client permission to invest for growth and legacy planning out in the later bucket. And some clients will say, hey, legacy planning, my kids are raised, Jason, what's left is left. Legacy planning is not just for the kids, it's most importantly for the surviving spouse. Because when one spouse passes away, what happens to their income? It almost always goes down. Think of it, 2 Social Security checks, possibly a reduction in pension. But yet what happens to income taxes? Standard deduction gets cut in half, brackets shrink for a single filer, a widow versus married filing jointly. Double whammy, income goes down, taxes go up. Important to talk to the clients about.
And what's great is a lot of sophistication behind this, but talk about simplifying it so your clients actually want to move forward with you.
Well, most people don't have a soon bucket, right? They got money in the bank and the rest of their money in investments. This is a typical before, and then this is a typical after we reposition money to provide them with the income they need in the first phase of retirement.
So the whole plan delivered on just a couple pages here to show them how they can implement their bucket plan. And then in step number 4, this is the continued service and support model. So this goes to show the prospects that it's not just going to be where we're selling them something and not servicing them. And Rick spoke about the importance of this from the estate planning side also. And he's going to kind of share their process so that you can see and compare it to maybe attorneys that you might be working with right now. But in step 4, a critical component of it is the family succession plan, continuing proactive services for the beneficiaries. Everything that needs to happen if your spouse were to or if your client were to pass away. And so again, this is just part of course, there's ongoing reviews and maintenance, but this is bringing the family succession plan. And Rick, can you share kind of how this holistic approach and process aligns with the lifespan of plans that you've created?
Yep, sure will, Dave. So it's very similar, actually, and so it has the 3 steps, as we mentioned, and the first step for us is here in the yellow, and the yellow represents the original design of the plan. And one of the things that's going to be most important for your purposes as an advisor is the green, and those are little letters. It says financial integration formula. That is our segue into putting the assets together with a great set of instructions. So the yellow is designing the plan, and we use a 3-page diagram, so we can't get it down to 2 since we're attorneys day, but it's 3, not too bad. And then we put the finances together with the instructions, and that tends to work pretty well. The blue is our ongoing relationship, and so I'll break that down for you in a minute. And it has multiple opportunities. So there are 2 big ones for the advisors, one in the yellow, one in the green, and a lot of them in the blue to be working in an alliance capacity with us once we do have a mutual client. As we go around this circle, sometimes folks age into needing elder law types of services. And one of the biggest problems we see is that elder law to most people means strip the clients of assets, which is not the goal and not necessary if you're on top of it and we're all communicating well. When the death occurs, there's a couple things you could do. You see the arrow going out. This whole circle is based on the life cycle of a metal, which clients get a kick out of. What's that got to do with estate planning? And it's kind of like the bucket, something that you can relate to. And so when the metal reaches the end of its useful life, you've got 2 choices. One is to discard, which is the arrow out, and that's what usually happens. And the other is to recycle that inheritance and take care of those that receive it. And that's where you'll see located the survivor support system, the enhanced settlement, which has a lot to do with instruction and education, and then finally the empowered inheritance. Most of our families, the next generation, inherits in trust from the previous one to protect against creditors and predators. So that's the overall process. And if you break it down, the rest of the slides I'll go pretty quickly, but it'll just give you a sense of what's happening. So I mentioned in the green, one of the biggest things is what we call the discovery dialogue, and that matches up almost identically with the step 1 and 2 that you folks covered. The discovery dialogue is both the fact finder and the second step of the goal setting. And all we need to really do is add a couple of estate planning specific questions. So the discovery dialogue is a huge opportunity. Some of our attorneys in my office, I prefer this. Some people do it jointly. Some people, if you don't have an advisor, you need a non-attorney in our view to do the discovery. In my office, I like for the advisor to do that discovery dialogue, and we just talk about 3 or 4 extra questions that we need. We finish off the design with a commitment conversation, and that's where we finalize the fee, and then we design the plan and review the plan with the clients and deliver the documents at that stage. We then move on to the next step, and the next slide you'll see has to do with this green. Another opportunity for the joint, which is the financial strategies session, and in that it breaks into 2 pieces. The session for strategy and the funding forum, and the third step in the bucket approach is where the recommendations are made. And so this is a direct fit. So the 3-bucket approach that you guys want to do, if Michael and I are doing a plan with the client, one of the worst things that can happen for us, we want to fund everything, is that we do all the work to put their current assets in the right place, and then they go to the advisor and change the planning around. So this is a great joint opportunity to be present with each other when the recommendations are made. So if it's truly a new client, it's very often that we kind of trade back and forth on different meetings in our respective processes, and then the strategy session is the joint meeting. And then, as you can see there, the bottom one is just the paperwork. We then move to keep the estate plan current, and this will overlap with your annual meeting, your annual process. So we call it in our practice the continuous commitment compact, and you'll see that there the asset review report is a report about title and values that we do, and that is a layup for us to work together. We give a little 10-page sheet. We call it an estate planning review worksheet to each client. That's something that can be shared with you. So if the clients have changes, they can do that. We, as part of our system, do an annual client meeting, which is a big picture, an umbrella of what's going on in the law, and then a small one, the client update program. Those are opportunities to meet together with the clients and keep very current on the law in the case of the annual client meeting and your specific client's plan. And then we do an extensive family education and training program, and that is ripe with opportunities for us to do that together. Family meetings are individual. We also do group training, and something really easy for the advisor to attach themselves to, and if not lead in some areas for the education and training. So that's our legacy or our update, the maintenance program.
If we could go back one slide.
Yeah.
If we could go back one slide, gentlemen. This empowerment program is a great opportunity for joint meetings with the advisors, and the key word is update. You can update the documents, you can update the asset titling, you can update the different services that the advisor is working on. The advisor gets to update his files on what the attorney is working on. It's a great opportunity for a joint meeting to update with the client together.
And thanks, Michael. And one of the things that I usually do mention is that I have an advisor who says, if I had a quote that goes back the other way like Jason did, what's interesting, it says that I do more business driving the clients to and from the meeting, and these were more elderly clients, than I do any other way with them. And so just staying with them in some of these opportunities, they're not exactly client appreciation sessions, but he kind of turns it into that, and it works really well. Direct time with the next generation that will inherit, and that's how you can keep the asset and keep the plan, the financial plan together with the next generation. And then moving on, Mike, thanks for jumping in. The wealth reception planning is our name for handling these major life risks for creditors and predators. So when you add them all up, what we're trying to do for the next generation, we call wealth reception planning. And it too has a process. And so as we move forward in the circle on the next slides, we'll do the same thing with that there. The enhanced settlement is one that you would want to know about. And so often what happens is that through payable on death or transfer on death, you can help move things a lot faster as we can with funded living trust. But what's not changed is the grieving period. And so, for example, some of the big insurance companies pioneered an account. MetLife calls it a total control account. There are different ones. Mass Mutual's big into that. Northwestern Mutual's big into that. That the money goes into an account for, in particular, the surviving spouse, so that the money isn't quite as easily available. It is available, but not something that you would blow in the grieving period. The typical inheritance only lasts about 18 months, maybe a year and a half or so. And so the best way to do that is to put together some sort of a program. And again, that's a big opportunity for advisors to provide that education and to be there and introduce the bucket plan to the next gen if you haven't already. And the Empowered Inheritance Plan is that next generation. So the Empowered Inheritance Program, when they receive their trust, they get a new one in their own name. And so proceeds are paid into that, whether it's insurance or annuity proceeds or their investment accounts. Typically what happens is the client designs it so the beneficiary can be their own trustee, and yet it's protected against creditor and predators from the outside. And what that allows us to do is to stay with the inheritors in a maintenance program. So that's the overall of the kind of the highest level of our process as you take a trip around the circle. So many, many opportunities for joint work and for synergy between the financial and the legal side.
Yeah, it's fantastic, Rick. And that's why, Michael is having success with Greg, working together, is when you have like-minded attorneys, and that's what I love, of the people, the attorneys that are part of the national network are cut from a similar cloth. And they work so well with comprehensive, holistic financial planners. And so because you're process driven, and ultimately it's all about the ongoing service, not just getting paid up front to draw up the legal documents, which is the challenge that I've had with other attorneys throughout my career until I found the right one, that now we have that good collaborative relationship. So if you are an attorney listening to the podcast or to the webinar, I would highly suggest that you contact the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. If you're an advisor, the first place to look is to see if the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys has an advisor in your area. And if they don't, talk to the attorney you have a relationship with and see if they might be interested or, willing to get involved with the National Network, because their training complements so well of how we go about doing our process as comprehensive financial planners. Download, speaking of podcasts, we have a fantastic podcast that talks about the benefits of working with attorneys, and just some of the more specific things you'll want to know about, conversations to have, how some of those legal documents work, as well as highlighting killer software, your eFolio that helps facilitate the process between attorneys and advisors. And there's a white paper that we jointly co-authored with Rick and the National Network that you may get some great value out of as well. So highly encourage you to check those two resources out, podcast, white paper. And as always, any questions for us, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much, Dave, Rick, and Michael for joining the webinar today. And we'll catch everybody else on the next webinar for the Rainmaker Multiplier.
The Rainmaker Multiplier on-demand series is brought to you by Clarity to Prosperity, a financial training, coaching, and IP development organization led by financial advisors, coaches, and business leaders committed to taking a holistic approach to advising. To learn more about our organization and upcoming training opportunities for financial professionals, visit claritytoprosperity.com.